This is Bespoke, 5 Live's daily Tour de France podcast.
Come in, BBC, come in, BBC. This is France calling. Today is stage 12. Put your hand up in the air like you just don't care. Take it away, Mr. Simon.
Hello, this is Simon Brotherton alongside Chris Boardman, who's here with ITV as a pundit, with our finish line review of all the day's action at the Tour de France. It's stage 12 today. We're heading south again now, diagonally across the centre of the country. Today's stage, 218 kilometres long from Fougères to Tours, and it's real sprinters' territory. So in that context, today's events didn't disappoint, with the usual breakaway group reeled in and the grand finale with a big gallop to the line. Marcel Kittel won the stage by half a wheel from Mark Cavendish, with Peter Sagan third. Andre Greipel nowhere after his team were disrupted by a late crash a couple of kilometres or so from the end. More on that in just a moment, but we had a different type of sprint today, didn't we, Chris? I.e. not a controversial one, but still the same outcome. Cavendish hitting the front down the finishing straight this time, but Kittel was just too fast for him today.
It was as simple as that, actually. I think they really got it together, Omega Pharma Quick Step. They didn't really put a foot wrong. That was about as good as it gets in such a chaotic environment, which is the last few kilometres of a stage like this. I thought they were going to get boxed at one point, but they didn't. And Trentin and Steegmans led him out perfectly. Well, actually, Trentin led out Kittel for a few seconds there before he switched wheels. And Mark just couldn't have done any more. I don't think we've seen him beaten in that fashion in recent times, for many years, probably before he was professional. Once his nose is in front, that's normally it.
I have to say, in the commentary at the time, I got it wrong, because when he was on the front with the foreshortened angle, I thought that he was going to stay at the front, because we're not used to seeing him overtaken that close to the line.
No, and we can't recall in recent Tour history that happening to him, and you could see the shock in his face before they got to the line. He was looking left, almost in disbelief, and sure enough, we've spoken to Mark after the stage, and he just held his hand up and said, the guy was faster than me, there's nothing you can do about that, the team rode well, he was just quicker than me, and it's hard to know what he's going to do about that in the coming days.
Do you feel that Mark Cavendish perhaps is still not 100%, because we knew he came into this Tour under the weather? Do you think he's just not on his best form, or do we have to just say Marcel Kittel is fantastically good, or both?
Well, I've been asked that question already this afternoon in the last few minutes, and it is hard to say whether he's going forward, rather he's gone back slightly or Kittel's come forward, but whatever happens, we in our opening sprint discussion a few days back, right at the start of this race, we said once they'd fanned out for the sprint, there was 3 guys going at very similar speed, and so we're seeing it incredibly even when we come into these sprints, and how they're set up by their team is making all of the difference, and that's going to be the case tomorrow too.
Let's hear from the winner now, Marcel Kittel.
It feels awesome. I'm very proud how we stick together as a team, how we work together, and to beat the best guys on this stage in the Tour de France with such a lead out, with such a sprint, is just awesome.
Everybody thought that Cavendish was unbeatable in such a sprint when he has a perfect lead out train. How did you beat him?
That's easy. I also just sprinted all I had. I cannot do anything else, but I could sit in his wheel and had still enough punch to pass him.
Marcel Kittel there talking with Matt Slater. Chris, there was a big pile-up near the end, roughly 2 kilometres to go. Edvald Boasson Hagen fell heavily on his shoulder. Before we talk about that, let's hear from Dave Brailsford, who's been chatting with Rob Hales.
I think he's going to be okay to continue, but as a precautionary measure, I think when you have a tumble like that, the facilities here are brilliant actually in terms of getting quick access to X-rays. So our doc's taking him off just to be on the safe side. You've got to remember, even though we're in a bike race, we have a duty of care. So it's not just about getting back on a bike at any cost. You've got to make sure that Edvald's health is a priority. Make sure he's okay, and let's see how he is. And off the back of that, then we'll see where we're at.
You were in the bus with him and saw him with the bruises. How did he look?
Painful, but actually he's got a range of there's some movement. He's got a range of movement. And normally, if you've got a clean breaker, you can't do that. If you've broken your collarbone. And it's extremely painful, but he could have fractured it, who knows, there could be a hair lamp, you just don't know, so better to be safe than sorry, and so let's find out what the facts are and make sure he's okay.
Dave, if anything, with Chris's lead at the moment, today's events highlights the fact that none of these riders can relax, and it's not over till it's over.
Yeah, absolutely, Rob, as you know only too well, it's in the final there, you've got to pick your line. and you can minimise the risk, but you can't take away the risk. And you just don't know if something happens in front of you and you ride into it, that's that. But we kind of changed our strategy slightly this last couple of days. So instead of putting a whole team on the front and kind of mixing up the sprint teams, which frustrates the sprint teams, makes it even more nervous. You know, what we've started doing is just letting Ian get a hold of Froome, and as you know, Ian's so good at moving around the boat.
He's reasonably strong at the moment, isn't he?
Yeah, exactly. But he's got the gas; he can power himself out of trouble. You know, he can ride round, he can move Froome right up back into position. He feels the movements of the bunch well, and that at the moment has actually proven to be quite a successful little way of dealing with the final, rather than trying to put the whole team on block en masse up there with the sprint teams.
Do you think some of the finishes are maybe getting a little bit tight and a little bit dangerous, or is it just a case of riders, they know what's coming, just get on with it?
I don't think there's any difference this year to any previous years, to be honest, apart from this year. If anything, it hasn't rained, and in previous years we've had a lot of rain, which makes it even worse. So I think it's the biggest race in the world. These guys now, some guys have got some success, some guys haven't got the success they were hoping for. They're getting more and more desperate, they'll take more and more risks, and that's when crashes happen.
So Dave Brailsford there with Rob Hales. Chris, a nasty looking crash there near the end, and it completely disrupted Andre Greipel's lead-out train, didn't it?
Well, we're still trying to work out exactly where he was, but we know he was involved. I'm not sure whether he was in it, because it was a proper pile-up. They were about 3 deep, and it was taking 2-3 minutes for them to actually extract everybody from that pile. So there's going to be a few cuts and bruises. We think it was one of the Francis de Joux riders who overlapped the wheel and went down first. We thought it was Buani to start with, the team sprinter, but that might not be the case. Nevertheless, it probably disrupted about a third of the field, and hopefully Edward Bosenhagen will be starting tomorrow.
You can see, though, how close these riders are to potential sporting disaster at any moment, because I think the crash happened about 2 or 3 riders behind where Chris Froome was, and a rider or 2 behind where Peter Sagan was.
Yeah, I think true to form in this Tour de France, everything's slightly out of order. We're seeing what is usually the first week, which is tight sprint finishes and crosswinds. I think luckily, because we've had some mountains in the middle, we've got riders that are now hours down. When they know they're not going to be involved in the sprint finish, they're keeping out the way. So there's a little bit more room, and actually just one crash today in the crosswinds and a chaotic finish was probably about as good as it gets for the Tour.
Overall, the general classification hasn't changed. The top of the leaderboard looks exactly the same as it did at the start of today's stage. Chris Froome still in the leader's yellow jersey. Alejandro Valverde still second at 3 minutes and 25, with Bauke Mollema third at 3:37. Let's hear from Chris Froome now.
What does it feel like riding in this jersey?
It's a privilege. It really is. I mean, this is what the Tour is about, and to be wearing this jersey, it's a special feeling.
Chris Froome there with Matt Slater again after the stage today. Another day for the sprinters.